The most expensive dinner of my life cost me an $80,000 wedding, a 5-year relationship, and my entire view of love. And looking back, it was the best damn investment I've ever made. My name is Lisa Ravel. I'm 28 years old, and if you saw me 2 years ago, you would have thought I had the absolute perfect life. I was engaged to a man I thought was my soulmate, Mark. We were just 7 days away from walking down the aisle. I had spent my early 20s grinding, building a highly successful digital marketing agency from the ground up. I had the money, the penthouse, the independence. But Mark was a small-town guy. He always told me that my fast-paced city life was too stressful for a family. Because I was blinded by love, I agreed to compromise. I agreed to step down as CEO of my own company, sell my city apartment, and move to his quiet hometown after the wedding. I thought I was choosing love over ambition. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I didn't realize I was walking right into a carefully designed trap. Exactly 1 week before the wedding, Mark's mother, Evelyn, invited us over for a private dinner, just the three of us. A little welcome to the family tradition, she called it. I had spent the entire day packing my apartment into cardboard boxes, feeling that heavy, anxious knot in my stomach. You know that gut feeling? The one that quietly screams at you when something is terribly wrong, but you ignore it because you've already sent out the invitations? Yeah, that one. I drove out to Evelyn's house as the sun was setting. The neighborhood was perfectly manicured, almost too quiet. When I walked in, the smell of roasted garlic and herbs filled the air. Mark kissed my cheek, took my coat, and his mother greeted me with her usual stiff, polite smile. She never fully warmed up to me. She always looked at me like I was a business transaction she was still negotiating. The dining table was set beautifully. Crystal glasses, flickering candles, the works. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation was painfully normal. We talked about the florist, the caterer, the guest list, but there was this heavy, unspoken energy in the room. As we started eating the main course, I noticed something weird. Mark and his mother kept exchanging these micro-expressions. A quick glance here, a raised eyebrow there. It was like they were having a totally different conversation right in front of me. Then, right as Evelyn poured the wine, she leaned back, looked at Mark, and completely switched languages. She started speaking in rapid, fluent Italian. Now, Mark's family has Italian roots, but in the entire 5 years we were together, Mark never spoke a word of it to me. He always claimed he only knew how to order pizza, but suddenly, here he was, firing back in perfect, localized Italian. Their tone wasn't casual, it was hushed, conspiratorial. They laughed softly, Evelyn looked right at me, smiled, and then said something in Italian to Mark that made my blood turn to absolute ice. See, there was a tiny detail about my life I never bragged about. Before I built my agency, I spent 3 years living in Milan, Italy, handling European PR for a massive tech firm. I didn't just know Italian, I dreamt in it. I was fluent, but because I kept my past humble, Mark never knew the extent of it. I sat there, cutting my steak, pretending to be the clueless American fiancé, while I listened to my future mother-in-law say, "Is everything in place with her bank accounts? Once the wedding is done, the transfer for the villa in Tuscany needs to happen immediately." Mark chuckled, taking a sip of his wine. "Don't worry, Ma. She's already selling her company shares. Once we move, she'll be completely dependent on me. She won't have the funds to leave, and she'll finally be the traditional wife we need her to be." Evelyn smirked. "Good. She's too independent. It's dangerous. Break her ego early." I stopped chewing. The room felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of it. 5 years. I spent 5 years loving a man who was systematically planning to drain my hard-earned wealth, strip me of my career, and isolate me in a foreign country where he held all the power. They weren't welcoming me to the family. They were planning a heist. I put my fork down. The metallic clink echoed in the silent dining room. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin, took a slow sip of my wine, and looked Evelyn dead in the eye. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled warmly and replied in absolutely flawless Milanese Italian, "The problem with your plan, Evelyn, is that Tuscany is a bit too rustic for my taste, and frankly, my bank accounts are none of your damn business." I will never, for the rest of my life, forget the look on their faces. The color completely drained from Mark's face. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. Evelyn dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, red wine spilling everywhere like blood. You speak Italian?" Mark stammered, his voice cracking, completely dropping the act. I stood up slowly, picking up my purse, enough to know that you are a pathetic, insecure little boy who needs to steal a woman's success because you can't build your own. I slipped the $15,000 engagement ring off my finger and dropped it into his half-eaten bowl of pasta. "Keep the ring, Mark. You're gonna need the cash to pay for the canceled wedding." I walked out of that house and never looked back. I didn't just cancel the wedding. I called my lawyers that same night and locked down every single asset I owned. I canceled my resignation. I kept my company. A lot of people think revenge is about getting back at someone. It's about destroying them. But let me tell you a secret. The most lethal, most devastating revenge you can ever inflict on a toxic person is walking away and becoming untouchable. 2 years later, my agency has tripled in revenue. I didn't move to a quiet town to shrink myself for an insecure man. I expanded to international markets. And Mark? Last I heard, he was still living in his mother's guest room, trying to pay off the debt from a wedding that never happened. Never apologize for being ambitious. Never shrink yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. And most importantly, always read the terms and conditions before you sign your life away. Sometimes the universe gives you a red flag. When it does, don't paint it green. Run.